Welcome back to the series in which I discuss whether a game deserves a remake, sequel, or continuation. And in this episode, we're going to talk about Singularity. I decided to replay Singularity as it was a title that fell into the category of high concept but forgettable. By that I mean that there were a number of ideas in Singularity that were, in my opinion, amazing. Utilizing the time manipulation device, or TMD, to solve puzzles and defeat enemies was pretty cool, and even after a decade, the TMD still holds up really well. I really enjoyed utilizing it to solve puzzles, defeat enemies, and find hidden pathways in the environment. There are also a number of big set pieces in which the player could see just how powerful the TMD could be, but its effects were only limited, and that while it wasn't an in-depth mechanic, it was the one thing that really separated Singularity from its contemporaries. Now, forgettable seems harsh, but I believe it's an apt description, because instead of embracing what made it unique, the game can come off as a fairly standard first-person shooter. You have a number of ballistic weapons at your disposal, and while these can all be upgraded, and I think that's a nice touch, their upgrades are limited to damage, reloading, and ammo capacity. The game has only 2 weapons in its arsenal that really feel unique. You have a rifle in which you can control the bullet's trajectory, which can lead to a pretty gory kill, and it's pretty stylish, and a grenade launcher that allows you to control the grenade, but that's only useful in select settings, and I think I only used it one time like that, so when you're looking at Singularity's weapons, you're not going to be overly impressed. You would think that a game that emphasizes time travel and time distortions would have weapons that emphasize this as well. You have the ability to age enemies with the TMD, which is both satisfying and brutal, especially when it's being done on humans. You also have the ability to turn these enemies into blind, rage-filled monsters, which is also cool, even though I'm unaware about how that makes sense, but anyway, it just looks awesome. You can also fight enemies that phase in and out of time, and the TMD allows you to pull them out of this phase so that you can kill them. Practically anything that involves the TMD in this game is a highlight. The problem is, the weapons just don't have that same flair. If you happen to play Singularity now, you're probably going to notice that the hit registration can feel a bit off at times, especially when fighting monsters. It just doesn't feel like your shots are registering, which is weird because when you fight most of the human enemies, they go down fairly easily. There are some special human types, I like to call them enhanced, that have armor and are immune to the effects of the TMD, but nothing can stop a Gatling gun at full auto, not even some of the most advanced monsters. It becomes evident pretty quickly which weapons are going to be the most effective at taking down all enemies, and you will find yourself dismissing the opportunity in using some of the special weapons in the game. I found myself switching to the Gatling gun often, especially when that damage was upgraded, and it just melts every enemy in front of you. It is a game-changing weapon when you get it. Alongside the normal enemies in the game, there are some boss fights, but they're all pretty lackluster. One serves as a tutorial about how to pull in items with the TMD. Think about the Half-Life gravity gun, and you'll get the idea. The fight in particular was really awkward because of how slow the monster's movement was, and just how non-threatening it was as a fight. Seriously, I would rather just be swarmed by multiple enemies with a few elites thrown in for a challenge. There's a boss fight near the end of the game. I don't know if you can call it a boss fight. It's really just this encounter with an elite enemy, in which Dr. Borisov, who's a key NPC in this game, is telling the main character that this enemy you're fighting totally different from anything you've seen before. And that's not true, because you did fight it earlier, and by this time your weapon damage has been upgraded significantly, so this threat was really much to do about nothing, and you're going to make fairly short work of it. I think it was a few headshots, and that was it. The first encounter with this enemy was more annoying than anything because of how spongy the enemy came off, and just how you were unsure of how to approach it. All of these boss fights could have benefited from the introduction of new abilities for the TMD. Imagine getting into these fights in which Renkov has to defend himself because he's about to be killed. And you get this cutscene and it activates a new ability of the TMD. And I know that's cliche, but I really feel like it would have been cool to see this more often, because it would have made these fights more engaging. It would have been a nice introduction to a new ability. Instead, it's your run-of-the-mill strafe and shoot moment, which should not have happened in a game that allows you to pretty much age anything with the tap of a button. There's a boss fight on the train in which in your head you tell yourself, well, this is a good time for me to use some new TMD abilities, but really all you're doing is strafing left and right and then waiting for these weak spots to expose themselves. And I really felt like that and almost every boss fight was a missed opportunity. What's interesting, however, is that when it comes to the narrative, I found it to be really solid with some really fun time distortion moments. At the beginning of the game, Renko and US Recon Marines are attempting to infiltrate an uninhabited island, which just so happens to house an abandoned Soviet research base, when an EMP blast disables their helicopter and they crash land on the island near the facility. As Renko makes his way through the facility, he ends up going back in time to 1955 and ends up saving a scientist known as Demichev from dying in a fire. But when he returns to the present, Demichev has taken over the world. I really enjoyed that because it never really screamed to you that this person was going to be evil, but he did have your stereotypical beard that just made him look like a bad guy. Renko is then forced to change history with the assistance of Catherine, a member of a prominent resistance group known as Mir 12, and Dr. Borisov, the creator of the TMD. You end up bouncing back and forth between timelines, but only through designated rifts, which I guess if you've played Titanfall 2, you're gonna be pretty disappointed with that. But these moments are a lot of fun because of just how surprised some of the soldiers are when they see you, and they tend to put you in some really interesting combat sections. I really enjoyed all of these when they happened, and I will say that for a game that came out in 2010, it's really impressive to see the facility age in front of you. There's a section in this game where Renkov used the TMD to resurface and rebuild a sunken freighter that you have to explore to find the E99 bomb, which is key to destroying the island. Because of the size of the freighter, the TMD's effects are limited, and the ship begins to age and break down as you're moving through it. This whole section is a massive highlight and really shows the potential for Singularity. After you're done fighting your way through and escaping the freighter, Renkov and Borisov are just going and fighting their way through to the facility. They go back in time to charge the bomb, and upon their return, they are confronted by Demichev, and he drops a bombshell that you've done this song and dance before. As you move through the facility, you're going to notice a number of hidden signs that can be read if you age them. These signs constantly question your actions and were actually written by another version of Renkov. With this revelation in mind, you're given a choice. Kill Demichev and go back in time and stop yourself, and this requires you to kill yourself so that you can actually get out of this loop. Or you can kill Borisov and rule the world with Demichev. There's a secret third option in which you can kill both of them and thrust the world into chaos. You can guess which one I chose after much deliberation.
I will grant you unlimited power. Make your choice, Captain.
My God, he's dead. Captain, you just killed the most powerful man in the world. But this changes nothing. To correct history, you must go back in time and stop yourself from saving Demichev in the burning building. No, Captain.
With Dr. Borisov and Chancellor Demichev dead, the knowledge of E99 and Categorize 12 dies with them.
Regardless, I enjoyed being given a choice, even though I wish there were more player-dependent actions that helped shape the narrative as you moved along. With all of this in mind, I believe that Singularity deserves a remake because it could greatly benefit from the advancements in technology since 2010. For example, in Titanfall 2's campaign, it has a section in which the player can freely phase from the past to the present. This ability alone would create a far more seamless experience in Singularity and can be used to greatly enhance the puzzle solving and combat. Puzzles in this game are really simple. They basically break down into aging a crate and then using it to get over certain areas because you, for whatever reason, cannot mantle. The developers can reshape certain areas to accommodate the seamless shifting so that puzzles can now have an emphasis on environmental puzzle solving. I think that would be amazing. In combat, you could utilize the TMD in combination with your weapons. There should be an alternate fire mode that focuses on time distortion abilities, whether that's putting an enemy in stasis, phasing them out of existence, or aging them. You could also use the TMD to phase in and out to get behind or around enemies, so if you don't want to fight, you don't have to. The possibilities there are endless. You can also take what you have already in the TMD abilities and enhance them. The pulse ability could have multiple variations in regard to what it does, so instead of just blasting enemies backward, it could immediately age everyone in the area, push everyone into stasis, or turn a group of enemies into monsters. The single target aging ability should be expanded to multiple targets, or you should be able to bypass the armor of enhanced enemies. I cannot tell you how frustrating it was sometimes to only be able to target single enemies with some of these abilities, knowing that it would be fun to see the chaos created from being able to turn a bunch of them into monsters. I would love to see Singularity get a remake, because imagining this title embracing the time distortion mechanic could create a wholly unique experience. We're already getting titles in which you're able to seamlessly travel between worlds like Ratchet & Clank: A Rift Apart, so imagine what a title like Singularity could be if it were to be remade. It would be an incredibly ambitious undertaking, but one I think people would enjoy. Rapidly advancing technology is allowing gamers to experience things that we were once thought impossible. Certain sections like the one found in Titanfall 2 were eye-opening and made us wonder what it would be like with a game whose entire premise was time traveling or time distortion, but in a seamless manner. Singularity toyed with that concept and had a number of good ideas, even if they were all executed at the surface level. We are over 10 years removed since its release. This would be the perfect time for Activision to revisit Singularity. I know that it's a small chance, but it's one that I think fans of the game would enjoy, and I believe that in the right hands, you would get one hell of an experience. And that is going to do it for this video. So if you like the content, please consider like, sharing, and subscribing. If you happen to have played Singularity and you have your own thoughts on it, please leave a comment down below. I am Ken from Pixelated Thoughts, and I will talk to you next time.